For as long as inflation is outside of our target, we have to remain vigilant and recalibrate policy to make sure that inflation declines to the midpoint of our inflation target range of 4.5%. I think we are fortunate, and you said that we started to do it incrementally last year. We started adjusting policy in 2021. And I think that many of the Latin American central banks also started adjusting policy in 2021. And it had to do with taking a call about the nature of the shocks that we experienced. And initially, we apportioned the shocks to be 50% supply shocks and 50% demand shocks. The problem was that given that there was a series of supply shocks, we started to see evidence that it was beginning to feed into domestic price formulation. And that is why we stepped up the pace of policy adjustments that we saw last year. Until we see inflation firmly declining towards the midpoint of our inflation targeting range, we will have to continue to remain vigilant and recalibrate policy as necessary.
But are we closer to the peak now?
That anybody who would say we are closer to the peak would have to know what the peak is. And the truth of the matter is that I don't think that there's any central bank at the moment that could tell you what the peak is. What we do know or have seen was that headline inflation in South Africa had peaked, because now for 3, maybe 4 consecutive months, it had been declining. But it is declining at a more pedestrian pace than the way it took off. It took off like a rocket, and now it is declining at a very pedestrian pace. And until you see that trend is firmly entrenched, it would be too difficult to call
it's like
for
taking the elevator